I was outright either lied to or told wrong information, or just you walk in rooms and it's like you're not there because you're
Mhm.
lonely. You kind of feel invisible. People only maybe sometimes even talk to you out of curiosity, not because they're really gonna do a deal with you. They just wondering, like,
Right.
why are you here? So
Exactly.
yeah, it was definitely moments where you felt like, am I even supposed to be doing this? And that's why I moved to Atlanta specifically, because it had the highest rate of Black women owned businesses in the country. And I
Wow.
felt like it would be more amenable to me building a business in commercial real estate for me, not only trying to attain wealth financially, but for me, the freedom is my why as well. I've had very well meaning people who were mentors tell me, well, you need to focus on just this if you want
Mhm.
to do it, or you need to be at a big firm if you want to work in commercial. But when I realized the people I talk to every day, I deal with on a daily basis, whether it's friends, family, or acquaintances who have businesses and they run into issues and did not get proper counsel or any counsel at all beforehand, that's a reminder of when you can help people solve a problem or prevent a problem, be more proactive. That becomes my why and has been my why.
This is the Commercial Builders Network, where trust is restored, power is reclaimed, and legacy is built. Let's get to work. Well, hello, beautiful people. This is Tanisha Reed with the Commercial Builders Network. I am here with the amazing Aisha Thomas. She is not only a real estate broker, she is a real estate attorney. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you, Tanisha, for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. You're a hot commodity. You hard to get in touch with. And then, you get all these awards and stuff. Big time, big time. So can you please explain to people who you are and where you're from and what is it that you do best?
Well, I'm Aisha J. Thomas. I am from the D, the real D,
The
Detroit,
real deal.
Michigan. Let me clarify. From Detroit, Michigan. I am the founder and CEO of the Thomas Agency, which is a real estate brokerage based in Michigan and Georgia. And I'm also licensed in California. And I'm also the CEO of a law firm based in Atlanta called AJT Law, where I am licensed to practice in Michigan and Georgia as well, where we are experienced, responsive, and we add value to your real estate transactions. It's been in real estate for 24 years now, 25 years almost,
Awesome.
and worked set of every seat at the table, every seat at the table. So just excited to be here and discuss commercial real estate with you. That has a special place in my heart because there's
Yes.
not a lot of us in it. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome, awesome. I want y'all to put on record all the ands she add. And she does this. And a little bit of that too. Also, so with 20 plus years of experience inside of commercial real estate, what pulled you into this industry and how did you know it was your calling?
Well, what pulled me in, let me say this, is that I'm a reader of biographies, autobiographies. And one of the ongoing themes I noticed in a lot of successful people's stories were that they owned real estate. It was their key to wealth. So right when I was graduating from college, a friend of mine at the time, her family owned the first black brokerage in Detroit. So they have a long-standing history in real estate. And when she was in medical school, I had just finished and we were like, let's go get our real estate license. She was like, yeah, we can put it with my aunt. Didn't think
Yeah.
anything else of it. I just only had an interest in terms of developing wealth for myself and learning about it so I wouldn't make a mistake in my first transaction. So that's what led me into real estate initially. Always worked for smaller boutique type of organizations. So got a lot of hands on. And during that time in Michigan, ran right up into uh, the foreclosure crisis, where everything just dropped. So it was definitely doing a high volume, but low quality type deals. So you had to
Mm-hmm.
sell a lot to make a little bit of money. And
Yeah.
so got thrown in the fire, learned a lot about REOs because that's what the broker at the time I was under taught me. And so that just kind of pulled me in there. And then while I was in there, I did, my first small building sale. And I said, okay, I want to learn a little bit more about this. So eventually, when I went to law school, I made real estate and commercial real estate law my focus.
Awesome. And you said REOs. For those who don't know what REOs is, what is that?
That's real estate owned property. Some basically property that's been foreclosed on that's owned by the lender. So lending institution. In most cases, we know that's normally a bank, but it
Hmm.
could be bank, insurance company. It could be even a hard money lender, which could be a person too. But it's basically real estate owned. REO stands for real estate owned, meaning it's owned by the lender who loaned the money.
Awesome. And with the current situation we are in with the economy right now, do you think this is a good time to get into REOs as well?
Well, actually, it's not a lot of REOs like in the market, like from what we experience. I don't know if we'll ever see that again because
Okay.
everyone thought even during COVID, like, oh yeah, a bunch of properties it's gonna be a fire sale. We're gonna have all these options. And what happened during COVID? The prices went up.
Yep.
There was like everybody was buying, the money was flowing, the interest rates were low. So we didn't have that effect. But I think it's always a good time to get in REOs because that's probably will be where you'll find some of the best deals, whether it's residential or commercial.
Interesting. Interesting.
Despite
And
what everyone thinks, the bank does not want to own the property.
oh, that's good. Despite what they think, the
Hmm.
bank doesn't want to own the property. So how would you get into that? Like, do you just, I mean, you don't reach out to a, banker. Like, who would you call and who would you reach out to in those instances?
Well, in terms of being an investor or being a realtor or a real estate broker.
An investor.
Okay, so as an investor, you definitely have to real estate is a relationship-based business, right? So
Mhm.
you have to have connections with agents who may have connections with banks. A lot of times you won't be able to go directly, but it just depends on who you know. So that's why I say it's very much relationship based because I've had clients who had a direct plug into the bank
Mhm.
so they can still make offers directly or they still have to utilize a real estate professional, but if you're just starting out, the first thing would be is to look online. Everybody goes online anyway. 90% of buyers use online resources to find property, but don't skip on getting a professional to help you, whether it's a real estate agent or attorney later, because that's where you usually see the problem. You
Yeah.
can use the internet to find the property. Sometimes some banks even list their REOs online and they'll have the contact information of either the asset manager or their chosen real estate representative. So you can go directly to the source at some point and with some organizations, others they only list strictly through realtors or real estate agents.
Awesome, awesome. And how would you find a real estate agent who specializes in REOs? And why would you? Because some people, like you said, will want to go to the source themselves. They don't want to pay an agent. They're like, I can figure it out. Like, why is it important to use an agent?
Well, it's important, especially as a buyer. It doesn't hurt you. Now, we all know
Mhm.
about the big lawsuit that happened where about the fees and everything else. But overall, it really does not hurt you. A lot of people think they'll get a better deal if they're going straight to the source.
Mhm.
Most times, especially if the property is listed, the seller has to pay the commission anyway.
Yeah.
And it really does not give you any kind of advantage. Maybe it may appear on the surface with their agent, you'll
Mhm.
have an advantage. But remember, that agent works for them. They're not going to work for you. They just want the deal
Mhm.
to close.
Right.
Best believe they are either contractually required to represent the best interest of their client, not you, more than likely. So, it's best to have somebody who's working in your best interest, who has knowledge about REOs and how to find agents or brokers who have that knowledge. A lot of times, people who do that market, there's a lot of organizations where people can list, like the National Association of Realtors, NARAD, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which is the Black organization because we couldn't always be members of the National Association of Realtors. So
Yeah.
those type of organizations will list their members, list their specialties. If you need a referral system, always ask around. Or even if you do go directly to the lending institutions, they usually can refer you to who represents them.
Great nuggets. So I'm gonna dial back a little bit and ask you, was there a moment early in your career where you were questioning if you were even supposed to be in this space and what kept you going?
Absolutely. Well, as we know, commercial real estate is less than 1% women and minorities, right? So, when I first got into decided I wanted to do commercial real estate, I went out to after law school, went out to LA, and I was admitted into the Ross Real Estate Development Program that was specifically for minorities at USC. Ended up not doing it just because it conflicted. Because I'm like, hey, I need a job and I can't be out here for weeks on end. So I ended up finding Project REAP, which totally exposed me to commercial real estate in a different aspect. There's so many facets of it. And so I didn't realize there was more to it than just brokerage. Everybody just thinks, oh, I want to work in real estate, so I'll sell it. But you can
Mhm.
be in management, you can be in so many different types of areas in terms of management, sales, when I say management, it could be asset management or property management, industrial, commercial, hotel, hospitality. And so I learned about all these different areas and realized it's like it's not a lot of us. And so even when I eventually relocated to Atlanta, I interviewed and had mentors. And, I was literally told to my face a few times, oh, well, you have to have this certification in order to do this. Or don't mention that you're interested in development if you want to work in brokerage. And it was like so many false barriers that were created, and you really don't see anybody that looks like you when you go to all these meetings, especially when I was in LA.
Mhm.
Went to one meeting and someone asked the question like, okay, how do I get business? And the guy said, we were in a country club at the moment in Orange County, and he said, when you go to the club, you ask around and see who's looking, or your parents friends, or and I'm thinking to myself, the clubs I go to, they're not buying buildings.
No.
And, my parents' friends don't all own,
Mm,
don't
mm,
work in industries or own businesses. So,
yeah.
it was a reality check that okay, we have to create our own markets. We don't have those same advantages, but it does not mean that there is not opportunity because we all know from small mom and pop businesses, real estate is everywhere. So,
Absolutely.
those were some of the experiences I've had where I was outright either lied to or told wrong information, or just you walk in rooms and it's like you're not there because you're the
Mhm.
only. You kind of feel invisible.
Yeah.
And people only maybe sometimes even talk to you out of curiosity, not because they're really gonna do a deal with you. They're just wondering like,
Right.
why are you here?
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, it was definitely moments where you felt like, am I even supposed to be doing this? And that's why I moved to Atlanta specifically because it had the highest rate of Black women-owned businesses in the country. And I
Wow.
felt like it would be more amenable to me building a business in commercial real estate because obviously, if you have businesses, whether it's from retail, um, brick and mortar to industrial, and everything in between office, if it's a lot of Black women who look like me, they more than likely do not have representation that looks like them. So
Mhm.
I felt like it was an opportunity, and that's what made me keep going.
Yeah, for me, it has been tough as well, like finding a mentor. Like, have you found your ideal mentor? How did you go about it? Or was Project Reap it? Or you just been moving and shaking, figuring it out?
Well, Project REAP, like I said, I'll give kudos to that program because it was instrumental in the exposure to others who look like you. And a lot of times I found that even people who had been in the industry who were minorities, a lot of them were just kind of holding on for dear life themselves to stay in the
Mhm.
business. So it wasn't always that they didn't want to help you, but
Yeah.
a lot of times they were still figuring it out as well and navigating that process. So they could only share so much.
Mhm.
Or since it is still a male dominated role, even I found with Black men, it was still a lot of gatekeeping there,
Mm.
which surprised me.
Yeah.
But it was still like, okay, now, okay, you infiltrated this space. Now it's us in here, but now it's still a boys' club, even with the Black men or men of
Mhm.
color. So that was another barrier, but you just got to do your thing, get out here. And in terms of finding mentors, I did a lot of volunteering. I have a book called Getting to the 1%, and that basically
Awesome.
shares my journey. It's an ebook, real quick read, but I shared a lot with people, students or whoever contacts me and say, what do I do next? How do I get started? And I did a lot of volunteering, which put me in rooms that I either couldn't afford to get into, or real estate, like I said, is relationships. So when you're at all these different events, if nothing else, you start looking familiar to some of these people.
Mhm.
So then they'll remember your name. So then when you eventually do call on a property, they're like, "Oh, okay, I remember you kinda," you know? And
Yeah.
as far as mentorship, I found them in different spaces to different levels. Everyone wasn't someone I called directly. Even the commercial board here had I was in their inaugural mentorship program, and that served its purpose to a certain extent, but no perfect mentor exists. It's just kind of, you got to also be a benefit to people who as well, because they're busy. And so I
Mhm.
kind of found mentorship there. I have a mentorship in the law who works in commercial. And even people who are on the same level or right above you are great resources, because, a lot of times we always look into the person who's the top person,
Yeah.
when we really should be looking to our peers. And a lot of us have
Mm.
helped each other along the way, pulled each other in on deals, shared opportunities, where some of those people who are way more established, they don't know you. It's like
Yeah.
they probably getting hundreds of calls a year of people wanting mentorship or help
Mhm.
information. So you got to kind of find a mixture, but I don't think it's one perfect mentor, and it really just depends on what you want to do too. So I would always say to people, first establish what you want to do, because I get people who call me all the time, and I want to get in commercial real estate. Well, what does that mean? Like, what
Yeah.
do a little research. Do you want to work in sales? Do you want to work in development? Do you, get that basic stuff. So then you can kind of lay out a roadmap of, okay, these are some people who are in the top of the game. I'll try to reach out to them. But if I can't, let me see if I can get to the number two or number three, because those are
Mhm.
usually the people who are going to be moving up later.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just let you know. There was so many nuggets in that.
I slow down.
One,
Person to talk
the
fast.
look from side to side. Don't always look at the person who's at the top. They probably don't got time for you anyway, but learn how to network amongst your peers and you can
Yes.
find some deals and do some business together.
Mhm.
As well as if you can't afford to be in the room, serve.
Sir.
Serve.
That
Oh, that was good.
served me well in many aspects, whether, like you said, real estate is everywhere, from your
Yeah.
church, your hairdresser, your doctor, all of these places we go to every day, your cleaners. And even though some of those businesses are owned by others, I said to them,
Mhm.
like, hey, how long is your lease here? And if they see you a
Mm.
lot and you're a consistent loyal customer, they might actually share that information.
Yeah.
They don't even think, like, I just did that with my cleaners the other day. I've been going there for probably 2 years now because I moved.
Mhm.
And I literally said to them, when is your lease up? And they're like, huh? And they're and I said, well, I explained to them what I do, and they're like, "Oh, okay, give me I have your number, but okay." I said, "Well, keep me in mind if you have questions or run into any issues. Even if I can't help you, I know someone who can."
Right.
So you just got to use your resources around you that's sometimes slapping you in the face and you don't even
Mhm.
realize it.
Awesome. That's good. So, with all that you've accomplished, what is your why behind what you do, especially when it comes to minority-owned businesses?
Well, my personal why is definitely my own legacy and my children. Um, I've worked in some of the bigger name organizations, and then I've worked in mom and pop. And I found, for me, not only trying to attain wealth financially, but for me, the freedom, is my why as well. Just when you kind of create your own lane, your own path. And I've had very well meaning people who were mentors tell me, well, you need to focus on just this if you want
Mhm.
to do it, or you need to be at a big firm if you want to work in commercial.
Yeah.
But when I realized the people I talk to every day, I deal with on a daily basis, whether it's friends, family, or acquaintances, who have businesses and they run into issues and did not get proper counsel or any counsel at all
Mhm.
beforehand, that's a reminder of when you can help people solve a problem or prevent a problem, be more proactive. That becomes my why and has been my why. And, sometimes our folks can be a mess. And, I get
Well,
folks that don't want to pay. And, but then it's like, hey, you're either going to pay now or pay later.
absolutely.
And so I just try to reiterate the cost savings to them, that it may seem like a lot, or you may think it's going to slow your process down involving an agent, but they're really here to help you. And even if something does happen, at least you have another person to help you figure it out. And that also will save you money. So that's
Absolutely.
been my why, my personal legacy with my children, showing them um, entrepreneurship and the value of real estate, and really just helping my community, whether I deal with a lot of nonprofit organizations, developers, as well as small business owners. So, you can really go out and touch and see the things you've worked on too.
Yeah, that's
It's
awesome.
not abstract. I can
Mhm.
drive up a street and say, I worked on that, and show it to my
Yeah,
son, or let's
that's
go on this
awesome.
building and let you meet the guy that built it that's from my hometown too, or
Mhm.
those type of things. So you can really, and especially in communities we live in. So
Yeah. I like you said to show your son. I always make a joke that when I have children, their first word is going to be drywall and tile because I want them to take ownership from day one. That's why I'm
yeah,
working so hard.
yeah.
One day.
My
Now,
baby goes to school and has, ever since he was pre-K, had been promising teachers he gonna build him a house because his
yeah,
dad is in real estate. So
I
he's like,
love that.
he's in there promising houses. I'm like, "Boy, you don't have any money. Why
That is
not,
so
you should build your
awesome.
mama a house first,
That part.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So you are an anomaly. Like to find a black woman as the commercial broker, then a commercial real estate attorney. What made you become an attorney in this space?
It's funny because I have a love-hate relationship with the law. You know? When I initially went to law school, I said, okay, I was already working in real estate on the side. I worked in government with the city of Detroit. And so I actually got some exposure to some asset management, because that was during a time in the Detroit city government where they were kind of going under receivership and had to dispose of a lot of property. And the
Mm,
department I worked in owned a lot of property, or managed, under the
mm,
city's guys, like almost 200 parks, buildings. So I was a kind of pulled in my title. My boss at the time kind of said, hey, pull all that stuff and determine which ones we should sell, keep, which ones are near the proposed rail line that they were going to do at the time. And
mhm,
so it kind of pulled me in and piqued my interest. Now I was already selling, little investment properties here and there. And so when I went to law school, I went up to law school under the guise of, well, I'm just going to use this to help me be a better negotiator and understand contracts. And
mhm,
so when I graduated, I got into that program out in USC. Still, the bar was in my back of my mind, but it was not high up there.
mhm,
And as I began working and networking in the industry in different capacities, whether it was compliance with the city of Atlanta, I said, there's not a lot of people who look like me who are on the legal. And then those student loans were staring at me.
okay.
Well, let me get a return on this investment. And,
Absolutely.
I'm not ashamed to say it. I was a repeat bar taker, passed the bar. And I was out of law school for a long time before I even attempted to really focus and take the bar. So,
Mm,
a lot of my friends had already been practicing almost 10 years, 8 years before I even thought about it. And they're looking at me like, why are you not using your degree in that
yeah.
capacity?
Mhm,
And I was like, well, it's a lot of brokers out here, but everybody not a lawyer. So,
yeah.
and that's what made
Absolutely.
me go ahead and say, let's focus, hone down, take this test, pass it, and differentiate yourself further, and really have the skill set to be able to help people, because I was always on that side where you have the client who says, oh, I signed this lease and I didn't understand it.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, who did you talk to? Well, I called legal, blah, blah, blah. Or I called my cousin that's a lawyer. I said, well, did they practice real estate? Not, well, no, they do. probate or ended criminal, but, they said they could read the contract,
Right.
so,
Mhm.
so those are some of the guiding forces, and, I had a whole plan on how I thought it was gonna be look and layout, but, God guided those steps on how it was supposed to be, so,
Mm.
which brings me here today.
Awesome, awesome. Now, in this space, in our community, we have a lot of people who may have fear getting into real estate or development in itself. They may have been scammed, know somebody who's been scammed, lost everything. I'm a witness to it myself.
Mhm.
What do you say to that fear?
I mean, before you make any kind of decisions, you should get educated. I mean, I myself took some losses during the whole foreclosure real estate crash of 2000 between 2007, 2009. Lost my shirt and my skirt. But does that
Yeah.
mean I should never buy another property again?
Mm-hmm.
Because even though I was in real estate as an agent, I didn't quite understand all the financing and how all that worked. So it was
Mm-hmm.
about getting educated is one thing to help you make less mistakes, but mistakes are bound to happen. But also getting a good team around you, whether it is a attorney, accountant, contractors that you can trust,
Mm-hmm.
um, mentors in the business, or even going in with friends so you can spread the risk out. If you don't want to lose everything and put everything you have into one property, why not partner? More of us need to do more um, crowdfunding or
Yeah.
community engagement in terms of, partnering with our friends and family, and that helps spread the risk and gives gives whoever more accountability when you got 3 or 4 people you got to answer to. They're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna just run off on the woman.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been there, and it's just like with anything, you can't let fear guide you. You just got to become more educated, get a good team around you, and once you take those resources and knowledge you have and actually apply it, because you get people also who just go to every class you can think of, every
Mm.
seminar, workshop, every conference, all the
Mm-hmm.
they paying for all these virtual classes, and it's like, well, have you done a
Done anything? Mm-hmm.
well, no, not yet. I'm trying to get ready. It's like I was reading something or heard something where the guy said you cannot let knowledge your attainment of knowledge stop you from making a decision. You should be using the attainment of knowledge to be massive action to help you go into action. And
That's
I think
good.
a lot of us, because I'm a perpetual learner myself, so we
Mm-hmm.
use that as almost as a crutch. Well, I'm still trying to learn about it.
Yeah.
But you also learn by actually doing, and you can't be
Absolutely.
afraid to make mistakes because most times you can recover.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even
Yeah.
if you feel like you can't, you can.
You
As
can.
long as you're here to
Absolutely.
wake up another day and try again.
Absolutely.
Might take some time, might have to pay some debt off or save your money again, but it can be done.
Absolutely. I think because the biggest thing, people jump in thinking they're going to get rich overnight, and they want this quick flip. And
Yeah,
I've been one of them people that they're like, I just need this little quick little thing, real quick. If I
right.
can put this money in and get this out, we can make some moves.
And then
And
find this hidden defect you didn't know about.
right. All right. So, what are three legal mistakes that you see small developers and investors make that could have been avoided? What do you see often?
Often from the development standpoint, and even in just investment property, whether it's for owner user use or for an investment, is not understanding their zoning.
Mm.
That's a big one that people buy, or they'll just do a peripheral search of, well, the agent told me it was commercial, but there's different types of commercial.
Mhm.
And you gotta also be mindful that even if something is commercial right now, the county or city where it's located, they have these master plans and community plans they set out every few years that determines
Mm.
what direction they want. Because it could be one thing right now, and the city may say, well, from this point forward, anything else in this area has to conform with X now, which could be
Right.
completely different from your use. And they
Absolutely.
may you may no matter how much money you have, I've seen people buy buildings, do the build out, everything, then find out I don't have enough parking spaces for a hair salon, or I
Mm.
don't have enough parking spaces for a restaurant, or I can't even put a shop here. Even though it's commercial, I can't put a shop because now it's a moratorium on this type of business. I've seen people buy auto businesses and find out that they're not allowing any more, even though it's a whole street full of them.
Mhm. Wow.
And they just assume. So,
Mhm.
I think that's one mistake I see is people not understanding their zoning and the restrictions related to their zoning or even the city planning goals related to what they want to develop.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing I see, which costs people so much money, is that zoning one, especially if they've already started building out. They already
Mhm.
signed the lease, so now you just paying rent on something you can't use.
Use.
You gotta
Oh.
spend more money to try to get a variance. So that's a really big one, a big mistake that could really be prevented in most
Mhm.
cases. There's some nuances in there where sometimes somebody did check and did all they could and still ran into a problem, but
Mhm.
a lot of times people don't check thoroughly enough.
Right.
Uh, Another one is just you'll be shocked that everyone knows this and it's so simple. Get stuff in writing.
Yeah.
Get a contract.
Right.
Oh, we verbal is a
Oh.
contract. Yeah, it
Mhm.
is,
Yeah.
but we all know the contract. What does the contract say?
So
That's usually one of my first questions when I get a call. What does the contract say? Oh, well, we didn't include that part in the contract, or if
mm.
there's an existing contract at all.
Right.
So even though that's basic 101 doing any kind of business is get a contract, a lot of people skip over it or do something that's not inclusive of all the terms,
Mhm.
what or they don't consider some of the basic things like what happens if this A doesn't happen.
Mhm.
These are things you could have prevented or at least contemplated in advance to where now once we all are mad at each other, everybody's not speaking now. So it's a
Yeah.
lot harder to come to a resolution where in the beginning it's like, okay, so what happens if this happened and we're all talking? We can kind of decide in advance, like if this doesn't happen, I'll pay for every time I have a delay, I'll pay this per day.
Mhm.
You can negotiate this stuff in advance. Now, of course, that's another story if the person just doesn't pay, but at least
Right.
you try to be proactive. And so that's another one. The
Now,
first one is zoning.
zoning. Now, what I will say,
Mhm.
get this, even if they're family, especially if they're family, because your families be janky.
Who you telling? Who you telling? What zoning, getting things in writing is a big one. Another one I would say is just from a financing, but see, that all boils down to the contract too. Understanding the type of financing you have, the terms of your finance, and that's another big one that I see people run into a lot of issues with later. But yeah, so the big thing is the contract, the zoning. Those are the calls I get a lot. Not understanding your contract, even if you get a. So let's say you actually get a contract, still not understanding it,
Mhm.
not hiring competent assistants either via agent, a rep, or attorney. So I would say that's the third mistake. Because
Awesome.
a
That.
lot of people are business owners, so they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I negotiate every day, all day," and
Mhm.
until it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do they find a real estate Are they even if they're on the buyer side, they should still get their own real estate attorney, and like how do they go about, like, are you on like a retainer fee? Do you pay something? Like, how does that work with
Well,
working with
it
them?
really depends on what jurisdiction you're in, what city or state, because Georgia, for instance, is a closing attorney state. So
Mhm.
you, by law, have to use an attorney to close any type of real estate transaction. Now, of course, people do it on their own all the time. However, in a typical transaction, when you're purchasing a building or a home, you usually have to name a closing attorney.
Mhm.
And so in that respect, a lot of people don't realize that if it's a lender involved, that attorney does not represent either party. They represent the
Mm.
lender. Even though the seller could have said we're using AJT law, I still would only represent the lender. Now, if this is a cash deal, then I technically would represent the person who engaged me. But
Okay.
because I represent the lender, I'm here really to only make sure the documents and it gets recorded, all of that. And so if you do want to engage, a lot of times you'll see in Georgia, for instance, you'll see a closing attorney, but then especially in big deals where it's commercial, also see each side have their own attorney as well.
Okay.
And so, yeah, you can be engaged on a retainer basis. Some attorneys do flat fee, but mostly on the commercial side, it's usually on a retainer because I have clients who do multiple deals and call me about financing on this, zoning on this, a
Mhm.
commercial lease on that, because they have multiple properties or projects going on simultaneously. So, most times it's commercial. So, how you find us? um, Definitely, I'm a part of the National Bar Association, so they've created that's the largest and oldest Black bar in the country, and so since it's nationwide, the real estate section actually has a directory where you can go on here and say, "Okay, I'm in Maryland. Let me see if it's a probate or a real estate attorney there." And typically, even if you know an attorney, always asking, you can go directly to bar associations, either the state bar or other local bars where they usually do referrals too, if you just cannot find someone.
Mhm.
But ask around because you also, as same with attorneys, everybody's not created equal. Everyone does not have the same practical experience, even if they do real estate. So asking around, asking other investors or buyers or developer who they use, that's usually how we get most of our business. At least I can say personally, is mostly word of mouth.
Awesome. Now, when it comes to building from raw land to developing a property, what are the legal steps that you have to that you must go through in order to protect your vision, protect the money? Like, what are those steps?
Well, it really depends on the type of development you're doing. Who owns
Okay.
the land? Is this a joint venture deal? So it's very fact specific, but
Hmm.
just in general, one of the main things is controlling the land to protect yourself because is this a situation where you're the developer, but somebody else owns the land? What's the understanding on responsibility in terms of developer fees, construction costs, or it's usually some sort of partnership going on. So all of those things have to be pretty much spelled out in the beginning. Now, if you just bought a piece of land and say, "Hey, I have a client who recently bought about 18 acres," and so their goal on it is to make a family compound, but then also have an event venue as well, right? So
Hmm.
the land can still generate some money and use the timber and the hay and possibly bottle water from the wells and springs on the land
Oh,
too. So
wow.
they have all these different potential revenue sources. So the first step though, in addition to actually acquiring the land was, doing surveys to verify the boundaries and easements and all the things that they're subject to that could potentially, again, zoning, stop what they want to do in the future. So those are the first steps. Zoning, they have to do environmental testing on the land. Because even in a city, not just in rural areas, in urban areas, you usually have to do some sort of environmental testing to make sure there's no contamination on the land. So there's a lot of pre-development work that happens before you ever start digging in the ground. Um, Depending if it's a lot of trees on the land, you have to get a certain types of surveys, not just a regular boundary survey. You have to get an ALTA, topography study. You don't want the tree huggers coming out on you. Even though it's your land, you can't just get out there and start cutting trees down.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
there's a lot of pre-development work steps that come well before, and I get some developers who just are so gone on this rendering that they get from their architect of what their vision looks like. But it's a lot of things that happen before you ever get to the cute and the pretty and the stuff people can actually see.
Awesome.
So, doing your due diligence is definitely a way to protect yourself and your development.
Awesome. Now, with the thousands of contracts that you've looked over,
Okay.
are there any specific like clauses or anything that they need, you need to look out for or in like a financing or a, any kind of term contract that's to keep the person that's a small developer from getting it taken advantage of?
Hmm. It really, like I said, is very fact specific in the type of financing you're getting. Because, like, for instance, if I'm dealing with a nonprofit developer, they're getting their funding and capital stack comes from so many different places, right?
Mhm.
You have to make sure that the terms of all these different agreements don't conflict, because you could be getting money from the city, the state, federal money, grants and foundations, and all of them all have their own reporting requirements, audit requirements. So a lot of times that's a maze that has to be worked out. You're getting tax credits or low income housing tax credits. All of these things have to work together to get you to the end point, right?
Mhm.
But,
Right.
that's a big one when you're dealing with, like, nonprofit development and you're getting funding, but really just understanding the type of loan you have, whether it's recourse, non-recourse, what are the rights, what are extension rights. I've had clients who, did signature type loans, based on their deposits. However, when their buildings weren't performing, understanding those terms, because a lot of times, even though you could be paying your loan on time, but because your building may not be performing, whether it's because of a tenant's not paying, or just the market has shifted, you could still technically be in default, even though you've made all your payments.
Oh,
So
wow.
so not understanding your debt service coverage ratio, things like that. So I think that's where some more novice people could get in trouble if they don't understand that it's not always for the banks about you just making your payments on time. Because I
Mhm.
definitely have a client who's been making their payments on time, but because when they did their audits, it shows that the business was losing, the
Mm.
organization was losing money,
Mhm.
that basically breached their financing
Gotcha.
agreement. Even though they're paying,
Mhm.
they pulling that money for wherever they have to make sure they
Right.
own, but technically the bank could call it on them.
So they can just come take the property if they want
I
to.
mean, it's a process, obviously, for
Right.
that, but because my client at that time did not have their audits done, and then the ones that they provided showed that there was some, because they lost some federal funding, and, some
Mhm.
outside things that were beyond their control. So on paper, they're not looking that great, but they're still making their payments. The bank could literally call it on them. And
So
so
when they
you have
when
to
they get
be
these
emotional.
audits, do they know about them beforehand? Is it a contract how often they'll get
Oh
them
yeah,
or is it okay?
yeah. Especially if it's a nonprofit, for example, they have to do audits every year, a certain type of audit to qualify for all these different federal funds and grants and everything else. So yeah, everyone knows that these are due, but my point was they can get their audit and the audit may reflect something that's not so great or show that they're not making as much money or losing money. And now
Mhm.
that could put their loan in jeopardy. So that's an
Gotcha.
example of, like you said, what are things to look out for,
Yeah.
in your financing contracts. And another one, even though we're not talking, you didn't ask about this, is another one I see with commercial leases.
Mhm.
Is a lot of people do not prepare or look out for what happens if, for instance, like with COVID, we know that doesn't happen every day, but there's definitely delays all the time in build
Mhm.
out. And so
Yeah.
I've had people come to me and say, "Hey, I'm waiting on a landlord to finish their build out so I can do my, whether it was just a white box it or whatever the case may be. I'm waiting on the landlord. I have all my people lined up. I'm ready to go. I want it to be open by this date." And
Mhm.
the landlord is taking forever. And because they didn't contemplate that, they didn't use an attorney or even a broker to help negotiate what happens.
Mhm.
Um, the landlord, like, hey, well, the contract just says it'll start when we get it done. And
Wait a
so we're
minute.
not charging you rent, but guess what? Now they're
Mm.
losing contractors. They're
Mhm.
losing time because they thought their business would be open by a certain. and let's not talk about if they've already started investing in inventory or bought all this
Mhm.
stuff to prepare, and with
Right.
really no recourse. So in commercial leases, I see this a lot where people don't anticipate what happens when there's delays in build out, either on the landlord or tenant side. They don't contemplate the cost of or negotiating correctly. Most commercial leases, the tenant is responsible for everything. So they don't
Mhm.
even contemplate the fact that this building has a $30,000 HVAC system on it, and that could be
Mm.
your bill if it goes out. So guess what? In
Wow.
advance, you better ask that landlord for proof of maintenance records, even try to negotiate a cap on what you're responsible for if it goes out within the first year. I've had
Mhm.
clients literally move in, and in the heat of the summer, the AC goes out, and the landlord like, "Oh, that's
That's
part of
your
your
problem.
maintenance." And the bill is 15,000. And,
Mm.
for a small
Ooh.
business,
Oh, that
that's
could take you out.
thunder.
Mhm.
Or everybody in there sweating, so either way, it's gonna affect your
Yeah.
business negatively, right?
Right.
Um, those are the type of things I see in lease agreements that people don't look out for or consider and how it can affect their bottom line later. They're just so excited to, I got a space.
Yeah. Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. That was some good. You are so full of knowledge.
Thank you.
That was so good. Can you share a story when like an investor, somebody had came to you,
Mhm.
it was already looking downhill and you kind of helped them like recover and get out of that situation with your legal help?
Okay. Where was I already down there? Well, I mean, the client was happy, but for all intents and purposes, I would say they didn't get fully out of it.
Okay.
But we did come to a resolution. So, perfect example is one where this client did their due diligence in terms of zoning, all of that,
Mhm.
uh, started their build out, their tenant improvements. The mistake they made was the contractor. The contractor started the work without pulling a permit, like a lot of it, and said, "Oh, this is a quick something I can start, and I'll go get the permit. We shouldn't have a problem since it's zone." Contractor went to go get the permit, and they said, "What you building? That can't go there."
Ooh.
And so when you go back and look at the lease, the landlord put it all on the tenant. Like, you need to verify, even though we think it could be this, we don't care if you make this type of business here, but it's all on you. And technically, the client did verify with the city over email and phone, but
Mhm.
the city employee was wrong.
Ooh.
So what do you do? It's like, do I sue the city? And we already
Mhm.
know how long is that gonna take.
Forever.
They probably have sovereign immunity anyway, right? That's
Mm.
basically what they said. They said, "Oh, well, you can try to apply for rezoning, but okay, that's a 6 month to a year process, and it's still not guaranteed.
Yeah.
In the meantime, rent is still accumulating.
Mhm.
The contractor has already broken up the walls and started digging up stuff and stopped work order on that. And in the interim, this person had already made an investment in furniture, all of the cute stuff for the property, and had already gave the substantial down payment. And you still got the landlord still want their rent, and the city was no help. They said, "Oops, sorry." Right, the particular city this was in. Wasn't City of Atlanta, I'll give City of Atlanta credit. But it wasn't City of Atlanta, but this particular city said, "Oops, basically, sorry. We can maybe help you with the zoning, but if not." So, I had to really sit down with this client, they're devastated because they
Mhm.
put all this money in. I
Yeah.
mean, literally devastated, financially devastated too. I mean, they've already invested over $100,000 and nothing, and they had all these deadlines for when they could open the business. So
Mhm.
really had to sit down with this client and determine um what makes sense. And the client at first was very adamant about, forget that. I want to sue the city. The landlord needs to either work with me I'm not paying them nothing else. I'm helping them out by building this building out the way I am. But landlord's position, their counsel was we absolved ourselves, and they had an agent who, you know, negotiated to the best of their ability, but the attorney they used was one of those internet company attorneys that looked it over.
Yeah.
So that person still probably did not contemplate what happens if build out can't happen or something
Mhm.
that simple that could have gave them at least a couple ways to get out of it, even if they wouldn't have gotten their money back. At least you can break the lease. Long story short, we negotiated um, a lease settlement and to enable them to walk away because you got to remember this was like a 5 6 year lease that they had signed in advance. It wasn't a cheap
Yeah.
lease.
Mhm.
So, and they personally guaranteed it. The lease wasn't even in a company name, it was in their name, personal name.
Cool.
That was another mistake that,
Yeah.
"Why did you put this in your name? At least it could have been in the company," you know?
Right, could have filed bankruptcy and got out of this.
Right, but now it's in your personal name and you still have all these other assets and, affecting your spouse and everybody. So, long and short, how we resolved that was we ultimately were able to come to an agreement with the, landlord's council on an amount, given, a payment plan, and, even though it didn't give my client the exoneration and all their money back and all the stuff they wanted initially, there was some recourse that could be taken against the contractor, but, that's still another fight, still
Mhm.
more legal fees. But ultimately, the client was happy that we at least got them off the hook for this major bill that they were personally now responsible for,
Yeah.
in addition to losing all this other money and time.
Mhm.
So
Mm.
that's a very recent story. It's
Yeah.
not, and it's not always roses but then I have some good fun stories where like we saved a client in foreclosure, where we
Wow.
were able to get the foreclosure, negotiate the foreclosure being reversed. And I don't do a lot of litigating, but when I do litigate, I'm very specific about it. I'm more of a deal lawyer.
Mhm.
But when I see something where it's like, okay, I really want to go at this one. I think it's good facts. And you still, even with all of this, you still have to, the clients have to understand, even if you were done wrong, you still got to have the money to
Absolutely.
pay this loan off or whatever the case may be. You can't just say they did me wrong and, let's reverse it. Okay, the payments and the bill still has to be paid on several
Mhm.
sides. And I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of people kind of lose perspective of they wanna fight, but it's gonna cost you to fight, and even in the end, it's usually still gonna require some expenditure of funds, even if it's counterbalanced with what they owe you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that firsthand again on the residential side where I got scammed. He had all my money. So
Mhm.
it's like even though the contract's black and white, I had it in my business name. This the one time I wish it was in my personal name because I could have filed a lawsuit, directly to the court, filled out all the paperwork. And they were like, you got 30 days to find you an attorney. I was like, well, I don't
Yeah,
have no money for an attorney. So I
exactly.
had
So
to eat that.
yeah, because it's like, okay, do I go get an attorney? And, it's not fun to be able to tell people like, "Hey, the amount you have to pay me or somebody else, you could probably use that to pay off what you owe or or
Yeah.
vice versa, cut your losses.
Hmm.
Because the other thing you have to remember when you're on the plaintiff side is that person even collectible? You go through it all this and you can win, but then
Yeah. If they don't have the money.
if they don't have the money and they've already ran off with your money, 9 times out of
Hmm.
10 is not sitting in the bank. So,
Yeah.
so it's a lot of weighing of options that have to go on legally, but still having an understanding and being proactive is very important because it can at least, like you said, you had the contract, everything.
Yeah.
But how did you find this contractor? See, that's what I would have asked you, like, who referred him?
Oh, well, I know her name. I
Oh, okay. But,
Okay.
you have good experiences with
Since
them,
with
see
them.
their work, all of these things that
Mhm.
you don't think about just even if because somebody gave you a name, they could be working together, I'm
Right. That
paranoid.
look
I'm
look
like,
I
"Yep, working together. They played me together."
I was wondering.
Right, So, even still, even once you get a good referral, is that the person they referred, do you even really know them?
Yeah.
Do you
Yep.
trust them? Did you see any of the actual work?
Yeah.
These are things that did you look up to see if the person actually was licensed? Because in that case that I was just talking about, where the contractor started that work, he was working under somebody else's stuff. See, that's probably why he didn't know that he wouldn't be able to get that permit. He
Right.
just assumed, but he's not even actually licensed.
Wow.
And you already know that could have took one little call or internet search to determine whether this person, but that
Yeah,
client picked that contractor based on price only.
of course.
So, and come to
Mm.
find out, they probably know how to do the work, but they just didn't have their own license. So, even in suing them, it's like, okay, yeah, you can get them in trouble, but
Yeah. And the
yeah,
other thing is the potential of them filing bankruptcy. 'Cause that's the thing I was fighting for is like if they file bankruptcy, then it that could get wrapped up in that as well. So
yeah, and then you don't even know, you might just be fifth in line. It might be other people
yeah.
out there as well. So, like you said, you got to weigh the options, whether the juice is worth the squeeze, as they say. So,
Yeah. Like you said, it's better you either gonna pay now or pay later. So
hmm
I might as well
and
pay an
sometimes
attorney
it's
up front to do
experience.
all to do the research, right?
Yes.
And
A lot of us
things.
try to move so fast to get things done, and we're on the clock. And, you see it on HGTV. They did this house or this
Yep.
property in 2 weeks. So I got to get it done in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Where sometimes we need to stop, slow down, make
Mhm.
sure things are in order first. So,
Absolutely. So for a person that's working on their first real estate project,
mhm.
what should they do to get prepared to come to the table?
I know we see all this propaganda and gurus and say you don't need any money. You
Mhm.
don't need it, and there are certain type of deals you can do with no money. But if you are talking about acquiring a project, you're either gonna need your money or somebody else's money.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. Also establishing a team, which I think I mentioned before, where get you a team, get you an agent, appraiser, surveyors, accountants, uh all these things that try to have those in place before you need them so you can have conversations with trusted people where they can kind of help because of their experience. You don't have to learn and make mistakes on your own. They can say, like for instance with me, some of these things I'm encountering with clients is my first time seeing them, and I'm like, ooh,
Mhm.
now that I
Yeah.
know that, now I'm telling everybody after that.
Mhm.
Let's make sure we are not only getting it in, calling the city to confirm zoning, almost get a zoning report. So it's
Yeah.
something official.
Mhm.
Because you would think calling and even having an email from a city employee would should have been enough.
Yeah.
But if they would have put it on like official letterhead, then we cooking with grease because now we can say y'all are liable because
Mhm.
I did everything I was supposed to do to confirm this. But they can
Yeah.
say, hey, that email, that person don't even work here anymore. So establishing a team, having some money, even if you are using OPP, having some money because you usually need to have money for down payments or deposits, whether it's for your financing, putting it down on the property, on the contract, your earnest money, or even with contractors. You got to have some cushion in there for yourself, and you don't want to be totally reliant on whatever your financing or loan source is, right? So having some money, definitely getting a mentor or someone who can assist you in the business is another one. Like I said, there's plenty of people out here who've done deals, who do good business. And even if they can't hold your hand the whole time, you can at least make sure, see if they'll share some resources with you, whether it's their contractor, because their contractor is doing all kind of things. This your little project may be something quick for them.
Mhm.
So even if they can't hold your hand, and I've had clients who A developer client I'm thinking of in specifically, he offered to pay another developer 20 grand just to be answer his calls, and not everybody is not in a position to do that, and
Mm.
he couldn't find anybody.
Oh,
He was
wow.
calling folks and saying, "Hey, I know you're busy, but if you could just answer emails and a couple calls and maybe come to the property, when I get to certain steps." And he was offering to pay and couldn't find anybody, so he kinda had to learn on his own. However,
Mm.
we know nowadays, hopefully, the market is different, so I think even being willing to pay is different because now you get so many people who are not willing to pay. So,
Yeah.
but just not being afraid to ask for help either.
Mm.
Those are some of the things I think are imperative to getting your deals done, is not being afraid to ask questions, having good resources and people around you, having some money if you don't have all of it, at least have some to cushion
Yeah.
you, and be having realistic expectations and goals.
Mhm.
Because like we just talked about, everybody, oh, I can get this done in 2 weeks, and then those are the same projects people working on for 4 to 5 months later
Yeah.
hit all these snags. So I think having those realistic expectations too, and we know to move fast, you usually got to have a lot of money.
Mhm.
Because
Absolutely.
you're gonna pay
So
for it if you either want it done right,
mhm.
fast, or cheap and fast. I mean, you got to pick your poison. So
Yeah. What is your ask to have your business elevate to the next level? What is your ask?
me personally, my ask right now, it's funny you said that because at the gym this morning I was listening to a podcast, and for me, it's just about establishing systems and not being a one woman show. Because really, only true way to scale, and then I have to figure out too what the scaling look like for me.
Mhm.
I have no desire to probably to be that firm on the billboard with 20 people behind me.
Yeah.
I don't want that, I know that's
Mhm.
not what it looks like,
Yeah.
but, since time freedom is a big thing to me, it's like
Uh-huh.
figuring out the systems and strategies, um, because most of us will invest so much, like you talked about, in learning, for me, learning the law and the rules and all that, but I definitely have room for improvement in terms of marketing, and you can do all this marketing, but if you can't handle the volume, you're gonna
Yeah.
drop the ball anyway.
Mhm.
So I'm very mindful about not being the bottleneck in my own business. And
Mhm.
so have been working, my ask right now has been learning strategies from people who've actually implemented it and not just people who sell the marketing. You know what I'm saying? You can tell
Right.
the difference from
Oh, absolutely.
these people who sell marketing, sell how to do this, but it's like, well, you never really done it.
Yeah. Or I look at your page and where is your following at? What?
Right. So social media people like, oh, I can help you get 30,000. It's like, you
Mhm.
don't even have 30,000,
You got 2.
that kind of thing. So very
Yeah.
mindful about who you get the information from too, because a lot of
Yeah.
times their business is to sell you the service. And that's
Mhm.
how they're making the money, not necessarily doing what they're telling you to do.
Absolutely.
In which that's a big
Absolutely.
thing in real estate anyway.
Yes.
Imma create a seminar and a class, even though I've only done 2 deals,
Well,
Imma
well,
Imma
now I'm a coach.
Imma coach you, even though I've only done 2. Now
Mhm.
I'm the coach, and now really I'm making my living off of coaching you and not
Mhm.
necessarily doing the deal.
Doing deals.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, for my personal ask in my business is just establishing, or obtaining help in terms of getting more, strategies, utilizing AI and all these
Mhm.
resources better. I utilize it somewhat, but I know I could, what I pay for these softwares and all that, I'm like, I'm not using this stuff to the full capacity.
Right.
Let me
Yeah,
take
same
advantage
here.
of these assistance that they offer that you pay for. A lot of times we don't take advantage
Yeah.
of. So That's
Absolutely.
where I am right now.
All right, people, you here to ask. Come on, serve.
Right,
Uh,
especially if you got some proof that you've done it.
yes.
Just
Don't bombard her inbox with two people that is your mama and your cousin.
right, right,
That like
right.
we want some proof that you're getting things done. Awesome. Where do we find you at, and where do we find your book? Because we need to get that book.
Well, my website is my name, www.aisha, A-I-S-H-A, jthomas.com. And on there, you can find everything. It's a whole links to everything, whether it's the book, the law firm, the brokerage, schedule a consultation, legal or real estate consultation. Everything is there. But on social media, it's my name, Aisha J. Thomas, and the law firm is AJT Law, Thomas Agency for the brokerage.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it was a pleasure having you.
It's just so great to
Yeah,
talk to you.
likewise, likewise. You're amazing. And thank you, everybody. Please like, subscribe, and share with somebody who's in commercial real estate or commercial construction. She drops so many gems. Thank you.
Thank you.